groovy.
The Super Nintendo Entertainment System is one of my all-time favorite gaming consoles thanks entirely to its amazing library of games. I mean, this thing was stacked. Everything from Mario World and Chrono Trigger to Turtles in Time and Mega Man X. It undoubtedly has one of the greatest lineups of video games of any console, but even still, for every great game that was released for the SNES, it seems that one was left in Japan. In fact, the Japanese Super Famicom library is almost double the size of the North American SNES library, and with that many games out there, some of them are bound to be A+ material. Ever since moving to Japan, one of my greatest pleasures has been discovering such games, so today we'll be taking a look at my personal top 10 Super Famicom games that never made it outside of the land of the rising sun. Here we go.
Konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, Mario no deban.
In 1993, Japanese fans of the Back to the Future film series received something very special indeed, a 16-bit platformer based on the second movie, my personal favorite, titled Super Back to the Future 2. In this game, you play as Marty McFly as he zips around various locations from the film on his hoverboard, collecting tokens, going off some sick jumps, and dispatching enemies with a devastating backflip, which doubles as both a cool-looking trick and a deadly attack. Also, this game features some excellent level designs and a ton of boss battles, most of which have you squaring off with legendary movie bad guy Biff Tannen. It's not a perfect platformer by any means. There are definitely some irritating spots here and there, and the slowdown can get a little out of hand from time to time, but overall, the gameplay is very fun and satisfying. The icing on the cake is the excellent presentation and all of the great Back to the Future fan service. This is a very colorful game with some great looking stages, and I absolutely love the character designs. You get Marty, Jennifer, and Doc Brown all shrunken down into super deformed 16-bit versions of themselves, and I especially like the cutscenes. They're very simple, but also very charming, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the awesome soundtrack, which is loaded with various chiptune remixes of the iconic Back to the Future theme, as well as some fantastic original tracks. All things considered, this is a great game, and if you're a fan of the film it's based on, you'll like it just that much more. It's Super Back to the Future 2, and it's heavy, man.
Konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, Mario no deban.
I've always been a huge fan of the puzzle genre of video games, everything from Puyo Puyo to Puzzle Fighter, but like most people, my first experience with a puzzler was Tetris on the NES, which then led to playing Tetris on almost every console imaginable and in all manner of varieties. Tetris Attack, Tetris Plus, Tetris Sphere. If it had the word Tetris in the title, chances are I played it, but I was unaware for the longest time that one of the best games in the series was in fact a Japan exclusive. Tetris Battle Gaiden takes a standard game of Tetris and turns it into a merciless fight for survival, as each of the game's 8 playable characters has all kinds of dirty tricks up their collective sleeves. Anything you can think of that would make a game of Tetris more frustrating and infuriating you can do it to your opponent in this game. How about turning out the lights on their side of the screen, reversing their controls, taking control of their pieces for a brief period, or hell, just completely blow up their side of the screen and leave them with a ton of holes to fill. It's incredibly fun, competitive, and addictive, which is everything a good puzzle game should be. On top of that, the graphics and sound design are both top shelf. You get a colorful cast of characters to choose from who each have their own stage, complete with a song that matches their persona, and the overall visual and sound design are cute and upbeat, conveying the feel of a friendly game of Tetris, though it rarely remains friendly for long once both players amass a stockpile of game-destroying super moves. Without a doubt, this is one of my favorite Tetris games, and definitely one of my favorite Japan-exclusive Super Famicom games. It's Tetris Battle Gaiden, and it's oh so awesome.
Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Mario no deban.
Ever since I was a kid, I've always been a big fan of Bandai properties like Ultraman and Kamen Rider, but I never thought of shrinking those iconic characters down to fun size and dropping them into a Wild West setting. But that's exactly what Banpresto unleashed on Japan in 1995 with the Great Battle 5, 4 super deformed Bandai legends running around the Old West dispensing hot plates of steamy justice. For the most part, this game is a side-scrolling platformer, and a very good one at that. It offers plenty of tricky jumps, diverging paths, and enemies to contend with that you can take out with each of the 4 characters' unique attacks and special abilities, or in typical platformer fashion, you can jump on their heads, even using them as springboards to reach higher platforms. And in between these platforming stages is something really sweet. Shooting gallery segments that take a page out of games like Nam 1975, and more noticeably, Wild Guns. And what's better than cowboy versions of Gundam and Ultraman taking out legions of bad guys with 6 shooters and riot guns, when it's bundled with great graphics and an awesome Old West inspired soundtrack. This is a very colorful and detailed game with loads of different environments and enemies, even some very nice looking Mode 7 here and there. And I absolutely love the chibi gachapon character designs. They're adorable and a little rugged at the same time. On top of that, this game features an outstanding soundtrack that sounds like a spaghetti western at some points and Mega Man X at others. It's really good. So with Great Battle 5, you get an amazing 16-bit platformer, punctuated by some very fun shooting galleries, and topped off with some outstanding graphics and sound design. Plus, you get a Gundam in a cowboy hat, and really, how can you say no to that?
Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Mario no deban.
I'm not gonna lie, I love me some mech suits. Ever since I was a kid and I saw the film Robot Jox for the first time, I was fascinated by the idea of piloting a giant robot, and I especially loved any video game that let me have that experience, one of my favorites being Cybernator. So when I found out that there was a mech action RPG published by Squaresoft and developed by a team of people who had also worked on Cybernator, well, that was all I needed to know. Front Mission Gun Hazard is a 1996 release that takes the typically strategy RPG series and turns it into a side-scrolling mech action masterpiece. You go from location to location on an overworld map, and in each stage you have a mission objective, usually destroying a target or a set of targets, and standing in your way are other mechs, gun turrets, and various kinds of unmanned robots. Something especially enjoyable about this game is the level of customization. It is an action RPG after all. There are tons of different parts and weapons you can acquire to attach to your mech to alter its stats, abilities, and appearance, kind of like a 2D Armored Core before there was Armored Core. Also, the more you use a specific weapon, the more effective it becomes, letting you choose your favorites and level them up as you play. It's a very fun action game with great controls, some serious challenge, and a lot more depth than you might expect. On top of that, this is Squaresoft, so you know the visuals and sound design are going to be nothing short of breathtaking. Just imagine the kind of presentation you'd normally expect from a classic Square RPG, and apply that to a side-scrolling action game. So with such great sound and visuals to complement the outstanding gameplay, there was no way this wasn't going to make this list. It's Front Mission, Gun Hazard, and it's awesome.
Konnichiwa, Konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, Konnichiwa, Mario no Deban.
More than any other type of game, I associate the SNES with great platformers. Sure, it also has a boatload of great RPGs, beat-em-ups, and racers, but when I hear the words Super Nintendo, my mind immediately goes to games like Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country. So anytime I can find a new platformer that can hold a candle to those classics, I'm guaranteed to love it, and that's exactly what happened when I picked up Doremi Fantasy several years back. This is a 1996 Hudson Soft release that takes full advantage of the Super Famicom hardware, both in terms of gameplay and presentation. As a platformer, this is pretty standard affair for the most part, but it plays really well and the stage designs are fantastic, which isn't surprising considering that Hudson Soft also developed the awesome Bonk series of games. Milan can hop on enemies' heads to stun them and dispatch them with his trademark Bubble Blower, which he can also use to break blocks to find hidden areas and items, reminiscent of Milan's secret castle on the NES. You can also find useful power-ups scattered around each stage, such as bubblegum that can save you from pitfalls and winged boots that let you float through the air. There's even the occasional minigame to be found if you know where to look. Each world offers unique stage hazards, enemies, and boss battles as Milan completes his quest to restore music to the world. The controls are perfect, the challenge is fair, and the fun factor is very high. On top of that, this is a beautiful game to just look at and appreciate. It's extremely colorful, with lots of cool little details in each stage, and some wonderful character designs, with Milan himself being very animated and expressive. This is seriously one of the better looking platformers on the entire console, and the sound design is great too. A lot of the music is very ambient and almost soothing in a way, but it picks up for boss battles and other intense situations. It's very well composed and sounds awesome coming through the Super Famicom sound chip. So from top to bottom, this is a near perfect platformer in my opinion. Great graphics, beautiful sound design, and outstanding gameplay makes Doremi Fantasy one of my favorite platformers on the Super Famicom or SNES. It's up there with the best of them.
Konnichiwa, Konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, Konnichiwa, Mario no Deban.
I said before that if there's one thing I truly love in this world, it's giant mechs, and specifically video games featuring giant mechs. But what's even better than that? Video games featuring giant mechs that can transform into spaceships and destroy other spaceships, mechs, really anything that appears on screen. And that's exactly what happens in Macross Scramble Valkyrie, a game that feels like it was tailor-made For Me, developed by Winkysoft and released in 1993, this game is set just after the 1984 Macross animated film Do You Remember Love, but some people might recognize it better as its Western counterpart Robotech. It's safe to say that the Super Famicom is not a console known for its great shoot-'em-ups, but every once in a while you come across a gem, and some even say that this game is one of the best shooters of the 16-bit generation, which I can agree with. It's very good. It gives you 3 different ships to choose from that can swap back and forth between 3 different forms that can each be powered up 3 times, and each form has a unique primary weapon, so this is a shooter with a lot of variety for a change. Plus, it plays very well, the controls are tight and responsive, the challenge level is very high, it's a lot of fun, and unlike a lot of SNES shooters and games in general really, Scramble Valkyrie doesn't suffer from tons of slowdown. It's a perfect 16-bit shooter if there ever was one, and the graphics and sound are outstanding. It definitely captures the look and feel of Macross with various types of stages set in outer space and inside huge battle stations. It's a very colorful and detailed game with some crazy scrolling and lighting effects. It really looks amazing for a 93 release, and it's complemented by a great soundtrack. Lots of high energy music to get you into the action, and even some great 16-bit versions of tunes from the Macross anime. So for a shooter fan, for a mech fan, this is about as good as it gets. Gameplay, graphics, and sound, with a whole lot of robots blowing stuff up. Enough said.
Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Mario no deban.
Okay, so we've established that I love giant robots and the video games that feature them in all their glory. I love when they shoot things, when they transform into other things, when they wage wars and blow stuff up, but more than all of that, I love it when they clash in one-on-one combat. And being a die-hard fan of 2D fighting games, when that genre is combined with giant mechs, I'm immediately sold. Gundam Wing Endless Duel is a 1996 release published by Bandai and developed by Natsume, so if it looks like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the fighting edition, that's because Natsume took the fighting engine and graphics from that game and improved upon them in every way possible to make this game. Endless Duel gives you 9 different mechs from the anime to choose from, and they all have a wide array of special attacks and super combos, and what I really love about this game is that even though you're playing as giant robots, they don't move and attack in a stiff, robotic manner. The gameplay is super smooth and definitely stands among the best fighting games on the entire console. Some characters, like Gundam Heavy Arms, are loaded with long-range attacks, while others, like Gundam Death Scythe, work best up close and personal. You can dash through the air firing machine guns, swinging laser swords, unloading on your opponent with buster rifles, pulling off some amazing combos. It's really everything you could ever want from a Gundam fighting game, and I can't praise it enough. The icing on the cake is the amazing presentation. The graphics in Endless Duel are some of the best on the Super Famicom, and that's not hyperbole. The mechs look amazing, they're very large and feature a ton of detail and very smooth animations, and the stages are a thing of beauty. Again, loaded with lots of color and detail, and each stage offers something a little different. The soundtrack, no joke, is one of the best on the console. The tunes are high energy, exciting, and very well composed, perhaps the best work Natsume has ever done. So for having perfect gameplay, beautiful graphics, an unbelievable soundtrack, and more giant robots than you can shake a beam saber at, Gundam Wing Endless Duel was a no-brainer for this list. I absolutely love it.
Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Mario no deban.
You didn't think I'd get through a Super Famicom top 10 list and not have at least one turn-based RPG in there, did you? For a lot of people, myself included, the SNES is the system we cut our teeth on when it comes to RPGs. I played as many as I could get my hands on, and Final Fantasy III and Chrono Trigger were my absolute favorites, but oh how I wish we'd gotten some 16-bit Dragon Quest love in the West. Of all the DQ games on the Super Famicom, Part 5 is definitely my favorite. You can argue that it doesn't have the impressive graphics of Part 6, in fact it's kind of on the plain side, but the two things that seal the deal for me are the story and the monster collecting. As you play through the game, you get to see your character go from childhood, traveling around with his father, and getting into adventures, to his teen years when he escapes slavery to set out on a quest to find his mother and with her a legendary hero to save the world, to adulthood when he has a family of his own and discovers that he is the hero that the world truly needs. It's epic, it's emotional, it's one of the best stories ever told in a video game. Couple that with classic Dragon Quest gameplay that includes new weapons, monsters, and magic not before seen in the series, and the ability to bring monsters into your party after defeating them, basically setting the stage for every monster collecting game that would follow. And what you've got is an RPG for the ages. Again, the graphics in this 1992 release don't represent a huge leap forward in the series, but that's just fine for me. I still absolutely love the Akira Toriyama character designs as well as all of the iconic monsters, and the soundtrack, just like with any Dragon Quest game, is a pure joy to listen to. With all of this in mind, this is my favorite Japan-exclusive turn-based RPG on the system, and I highly recommend either tracking down the DS version, or if you prefer to play on original hardware, there is an outstanding English-translated patch available for this game. However you play it, if you're a JRPG fan, I'm sure you'll love it just as much as I do. Dragon Quest V is an unforgettable game.
Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Mario no deban.
Earlier I said that the genre of games I most associate with the SNES is platformers, and when I find a new game that can measure up to the greats on the system, I instantly love it. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I'm a happy gamer. Even more rare though is when I can find a game that doesn't just hold a candle to the greats, it does something totally unique and becomes a new favorite of mine, and that's what happened when I played Violin of Hameln. It instantly became one of my favorite 16-bit platformers, but it's more than just a platformer. It's an adventure set in a world where music has magical properties. You take control of the violinist Hameln and his servant girl Flute as they set out for the land of demons to prevent a potentially world-ending catastrophe. What makes this game unique amongst its peers is the dynamic between Hameln and Flute. In order to traverse the various obstacles in the game, the two characters have to work in unison, i.e. Hameln somewhat cruelly and comically puts Flute into harm's way to reach his goals. He uses her head as a platform, he launches her at enemies like some sort of human javelin, and most often stuffs her into various costumes that imbue her with all kinds of special abilities that you'll need to use to get from point A to point B, making this a platformer that really makes you think carefully about each section to find the best way to get through unscathed. It's extremely fun, challenging, and really unlike any other 16-bit platformer I've ever played. Plus, along the way, there are plenty of items to buy and collect to increase your health, give you new abilities, and new costumes for Flute. A big part of the fun is just seeing the two characters interact with each other and seeing just how much Flute has to put up with at the hands of Hameln. And the gameplay is complemented by beautiful, colorful, and detailed visuals that capture the spirit of the manga that the game is based on, but also maintains its own personality, and the soundtrack is outstanding as well. Most of the songs do their best to sound like something of a 16-bit classical symphony. It's something very unusual for a game released at a time when every platformer had to have some serious attitude. This game instead opts for a soundtrack that you'd expect from a big, grandiose RPG, and it sounds amazing. Really, I can't speak highly enough of Violin of Hameln. The gameplay, the graphics, and sound are all as good as anything you'll see and experience on the console, and it's easily one of my favorite platformers of the entire 16-bit generation.
Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Super Famicom. Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, Mario no deban.
It's safe to say that every game on this list is awesome, and had they been released outside of Japan, it's highly likely that they'd be appearing in lots of top 10 SNES game lists all over YouTube. But my number one pick is truly baffling that it was a Japan-only release, because it is one of the best games on the system, regardless of region. Shounen Densetsu III is a 1995 release from Squaresoft, and it's the follow-up to the amazing Secret of Mana, a game that many regard as one of the best RPGs of the 16-bit generation, but would you believe that this game is even better? The gameplay is so incredibly satisfying. At the start of your game, you choose the 3 characters that you'll take on your quest to defeat the 8 evil god beasts that threaten to destroy the mystical world of Mana. You can swap between these 3 characters at any time, and you can once again enjoy some multiplayer, which makes the game just that much more fun. You'll travel across the world hacking and slashing enemies, casting powerful magic attacks, finding all kinds of hidden items and treasures, and taking on some truly epic boss battles. Another great thing about Shounen Densetsu III is the level of customization it offers. Unlike many of its 16-bit peers, this game gives you control over your character's level progression by allowing you to allocate points to whatever attribute you like each time you level up, something common in RPGs today, but not so much in 1995. And when a character reaches level 18, you can visit a Mana Stone to upgrade them to a higher class, which grants them all kinds of new attributes and abilities. At its core, though, this is just an extremely fun and addictive action RPG with tons of intense combat, gameplay options, and a compelling story that can now be enjoyed by everyone, since this game now has an excellent English patch available for it. Gameplay aside, this is some of Square's best work on the Super Famicom in terms of visuals and sound design. It's right up there with games like Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger. This is an absolutely beautiful game to look at with tons of color and detail, great character designs, especially some of the larger boss characters, and a myriad of lush environments to explore and enjoy. It's truly an amazing looking game, and the sound design is no less impressive. The soundtrack offers up some brilliantly composed music that runs the gamut from soothing and orchestral to heart-pounding, intense battle music, again on par with anything you'll find in Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger. With all of this in mind, the beautiful graphics, the outstanding sound design, and gameplay that I come back to time and time again, I simply had to pick Shounen Densetsu III as my personal favorite Super Famicom game that never left Japan. So there you go, my top 10 Super Famicom games left in Japan. I hope you enjoyed it. Did some of the games on my list surprise you? Were some of them predictable? Let me know down in the comments, and definitely let me know what some of your favorites are. I'd really like to know, and until next time, thanks for watching, take care, sayonara everybody.